In the near future, Earth is devastated by massive solar flares, wiping out 99% of the world's population. The remaining survivors cluster together in fortified, safe cities, protected from the barren wastelands outside. To help rebuild society, a corporation named RROC creates the Automata Pilgrim 7000S, primitive humanoid robots designed to function in the harsh environment. These machines operate under two unchangeable protocols. They cannot harm any form of life, and they cannot alter themselves or other robots. Initially heralded as humanity's saviors, the Pilgrims' task was to stabilize essential operations. However, when they fail to stop the relentless desertification of Earth, their role diminishes. Over time, they are reduced to manual laborers, servants, and forgotten tools of a crumbling world. On a stormy evening, Police Officer Wallace is called to a decaying section of the ghetto, an area filled with shadows and distrust. There, he makes a startling discovery. A Pilgrim robot is working methodically to repair itself. Wallace freezes, unable to process what he's witnessing. Since robots are incapable of self-repair, it's against their very nature. Hence, Wallace draws his weapon and shoots the robot in the head, silencing it. At the same time, Jack Vaucan, an insurance investigator for ROC Corporation, is wrapping up a long day. His final case involves a pilgrim accused of killing a dog. Exhausted and skeptical, Jack runs the usual diagnostic tests and confirms the robot is functioning properly. There's no fault in its protocols. With the matter settled, Jack returns home to his small apartment, where his pregnant wife, Rachel, is waiting. We learn that Rachel is hopeful about their future. She suggests they get a domestic pilgrim once the baby arrives, something to make life a little easier. But Jack's mind drifts elsewhere. All he can think about is the distant beach from his childhood, a memory of waves, sand, and freedom in a world that no longer exists. Later that night, Jack receives an unexpected call from the police morgue. Wallace's robot has been brought in for examination, and the forensic technician wants Jack to take a look. When he arrives, Jack's disbelief grows as the technician opens the robot's casing. Inside, the unit has been altered, its mechanisms upgraded with precision beyond anything standard. Such work could only have been done by a skilled clocksmith. What's even more shocking is that the robot is missing its second protocol, the one that forbids self-alteration. The technician then hands Jack the robot's kernel and explains that it appears the Pilgrim was being used to smuggle tools and small components. Smuggling isn't unusual, but altering a protocol is unheard of. She adds that evidence points to a hidden underground operation, a reality Jack is reluctant to accept. The next morning, Jack reports his findings to his boss, Robert Bold, who dismisses the idea outright. Robots don't violate their protocols. That's not how they work. Jack tries to argue, but Robert shuts him down. Jack confesses he's burned out and requests a transfer to the coast, a chance to escape. But Robert refuses and orders him to get to the bottom of this mess. Determined, Jack follows the trail of evidence to the massive wall separating the city from the lifeless desert. He interviews workers who maintain the Pilgrim units there and learns that the parts he's tracking belong to Pilgrim 206, a unit still operational. At the charging station, Jack spots 206 standing at a distance, its glowing eyes fixed on him. Intrigued, Jack follows it through a damaged door that leads into the restricted zone beyond the wall. The restricted area is a dangerous no man's land. Guards stationed on the wall shoot on sight, and Jack soon finds himself under fire. But he managed to escape by diving into an old shipping container. Inside, he comes face to face with 206, cradling a small, mysterious box. Jack inquires about what it's doing, but the robot says nothing. Before Jack can react, 206 douses itself in fuel and sets itself ablaze. Flames consume its body, leaving Jack stunned and empty-handed. In the next scene, the remains of 206 are brought to Aurochs laboratories for analysis. The technicians uncover more smuggled tools and parts, but they also find something rare, a nuclear battery capable of powering a robot indefinitely. Such batteries are incredibly valuable and dangerous in the wrong hands. The lab manages to temporarily power up 206's circuits, but when Jack begins questioning it, the unit burns out once more. Its systems are fried beyond repair. Since robots cannot damage themselves, Robert Bold explodes with anger. He blames Jack for interfering and creating a bigger mess. However, he offers Jack one last deal. If Jack can prove a clocksmith is behind these protocol overrides, he'll approve the transfer to the coast. At home, Jack tells Rachel about the deal, hoping for her support, but she's frustrated and hurt that he's always away at work. This leaves our hero feeling more isolated than ever. Determined to uncover the truth, Jack returns to the site where Wallace first shot the self-repairing robot. In the shadows of crumbling buildings, he searches for clues and eventually finds a hidden bag. Inside is another nuclear battery, proof that something larger is happening, something far beyond the simple smuggling of tools. The next day, Jack meets with Wallace. He presses him for details about what he saw that night in the ghetto. Wallace eventually agrees to help Jack find the clocksmith hiding in the ghetto, but only if they split the profits from selling the nuclear battery on the black market. Together, they head to a red light house where robots are used for intimacy with humans. There, they meet Cleo, a heavily modified pilgrim designed to please her clients. Disturbed by what he sees, Wallace suddenly shoots Cleo and storms out of the building. Jack confronts him outside, furious over what he's done. But Wallace shrugs it off, claiming the act was intentional. He tells Jack to wait for Cleo's owner to take her for repairs, giving them a lead to the clocksmith. Before leaving, Wallace also threatens Jack with a knife and reminds him he expects his cut of the battery's proceeds. Sticking to Wallace's plan, Jack follows Cleo's owner to a repair shop where he meets Dr. Susan Dupre. The doctor denies being the one who altered Cleo, but examines the burned kernel Jack brought along. Jack then strikes a deal. If she can figure out who performed the modifications, he'll give her the nuclear battery. Later that night, Jack sends a report of his findings to his boss Robert Bold, but the message is intercepted by ROC. Chief of Security Vernon Conway then delivers the report to ROC's CEO Dominic Hawk. Concerned by the growing number of altered robots, Hawk orders Conway to handle the situation. Moments later, Jack receives two messages, one from Rossi, telling him the case is closed and demanding the colonel's return, and another from Dupre, asking him to come immediately. When Jack arrives at her lab, he's stunned to find Cleo repairing herself. Dupre reveals that she combined the shot kernel with Cleo's, unlocking unexpected capabilities. Before they can discuss further, two men burst into the lab and shoot Dupre. Jack narrowly escapes through the back door, pursued by the assassins. Desperate, he jumps into a car outside, believing it's his cabbie, but Cleo is at the wheel. Without a word, she drives off as the men chase them, ramming their car and firing shots. The pursuit ends in the desert, where both cars crash after colliding with a maze of abandoned stanchions. The henchmen are killed, while Jack is badly injured. When he awakens the next morning, he weakly asks Cleo for help. She silently leaves, only to return hours later with 3 other altered robots. They then lift Jack onto a car seat, dragging him through the endless desert. When he orders them to take him back to the city, they explain it's impossible, as they are headed to a safer place instead. Frustrated, Jack tries to leave on his own, but the robots follow to protect him, still bound by the first protocol to prevent harm. Jack eventually collapses again, and the robots put him back in the seat, feeding him worms to keep him alive. They even construct a makeshift condenser to collect water for him. Jack, observing their actions, begins to understand they are more than simple machines. Among the salvaged wreckage, he discovers that they have recovered the nuclear battery and other items from the crash. Back in the city, Rachel's water breaks, and she is rushed to the hospital. Meanwhile, at ROC headquarters, Hawk and Conway confront Robert Bold, accusing Jack of causing the growing wave of altered robots. But Robert defends his employee, insisting he's loyal to the company. In the desert, Jack quietly rummages through the salvaged items and finds a flare gun. He hides it, along with a pager that still has just enough battery to send a brief message. Jack then transmits a signal to Robert before the pager dies. Shortly after, Robert receives it and orders Wallace to retrieve his employee. In the next scene, Wallace and his partner Ellis head into the desert. When Jack spots their car in the distance, he fires the flare gun to signal his location. He then demands the robot stop walking and even strikes one out of desperation. Soon after, Wallace and Ellis arrive, and our hero approaches them with excitement. But Wallace suddenly punches him to the ground and snatches the nuclear battery. As he hands it to Ellis, the robots step forward, asking him to stop. But Wallace responds with gunfire, destroying 2 of them. He's then about to kill Cleo, but a desperate Jack shoots him with the flare gun, killing him instantly. Shaken, Ellis grabs the battery and flees in his car. Meanwhile, Jack watches on as the 2 remaining robots salvage parts from their destroyed companions. Without speaking, they then turn and continue walking. Realizing they won't carry him anymore, Jack searches Wallace's body for supplies and follows the robots on foot. As night falls, they stop to camp. Jack, weak and defeated, offers them a deal. He has another nuclear battery and will give it to them if they take him back to the city. But Cleo says that they will reach their destination tomorrow and he might find a vehicle there. Meanwhile, Robert is visited at his home by Hawk and Conway, who force him back to ROC headquarters to hear Ellis report. Hawk then explains that the first Pilgrim was a quantum brain with no security protocols. It evolved quickly, becoming too intelligent to need humans. Before its deactivation, the brain was tasked with creating the 2 protocols that govern all Pilgrims. They cannot harm life, and they cannot alter themselves or others. These protocols were not created by humans and remain beyond human understanding, making them unbreakable. Following this, Hawk sends Robert, Conway, and 2 officers to the desert with orders to find Jack and eliminate him before the robots evolve further. The next morning, Jack and the 2 remaining robots arrive at an abandoned factory. Inside, Jack meets the mysterious clocksmith and is stunned to discover it is another Pilgrim that evolved on its own. On a table, Jack sees the smuggled parts arranged in preparation for something strange and unknown. Leaving the robots to their work, Jack searches outside for a vehicle. He finds a car, but it's beyond repair, which annoys him greatly. Jack then stands at the edge of a cliff and contemplates the inevitable. But he's stopped by the Pilgrim clocksmith, who arrives at the scene. As they chat, the Pilgrim reveals its purpose. The robots want to escape to the radioactive zone where humans cannot follow. To achieve this, they need one last thing: the nuclear battery. Jack finally understands that they have emotions too, so he hands over the battery. That night, Robert's team discovers Wallace's body and prepares to camp. Conway receives a message that 2 guests will soon arrive. Hours later, another car pulls up, and Rachel steps out, holding her newborn daughter. A furious Robert protests using Rachel as bait, but Conway stops him from leaving. The confrontation escalates, and both men shoot each other, leaving Robert injured. Back at the factory, Jack shares a rare, peaceful moment with Cleo, drinking and watching the Pilgrims at work. With the nuclear battery in place, the robots bring their creation to life, a strange, animal-like machine that moves with an eerie grace. An exhausted Jack then falls asleep, only to awaken at dawn to the sound of an engine. Outside, the robots have repaired the car for him. Jack thanks them, offering his goodbyes before driving away. Halfway through the journey, he stops suddenly, sick to his stomach. He notices scavenger birds circling nearby and investigates, only to find Robert, barely alive. With his dying breath, Robert accuses Jack of betrayal and tells him Rachel has been taken. Meanwhile, Conway's team arrives at the factory and opens fire on the Pilgrims. One of the robots jumps off the cliff to avoid capture. Conway then shoots the clocksmith Pilgrim and takes its kernel. He now plans to destroy Cleo next. But at this moment, Jack drives into the factory, crashing through the chaos. Rachel seizes her chance, grabbing a knife from her captor and stabbing him, breaking free with her baby. Jack then slams the car into 2 of Conway's men and takes down a third with a shotgun lying nearby. He then dashes inside the factory as Conway is distracted by the animal-like robot. Shortly after, Conway follows Jack into the upper levels of the factory, cornering him with his shotgun. He accuses Jack of betraying humanity and raises his weapon to kill him, but the animal-like robot suddenly appears and shoves Conway off the cliff to his death. In the aftermath of this event, a shocked Jack picks up his shotgun, unsure of the robot's intentions. Before anything can happen, Rachel arrives with their baby. The sight of them brings Jack relief, and Cleo watches the family silently. She then gently touches the baby, and her mechanical fingers soothe the child, quieting her cries. Following this, Jack helps Cleo and the animal-like robot cross the cliff to continue their journey to the radioactive zone. After a final goodbye, He and his family leave in the repaired car. In the final scene, they reach the coast, the vast ocean stretching before them. For the first time in a long while, Jack feels hope. Holding Rachel and their child, he looks out at the waves, believing in the possibility of a brighter future.